your analysis is actually not new. It's a pattern that we've seen, and it's quickly becoming a pattern that is becoming a crisis of credibility, where fossil fuel has become systemic, strategic, and recurring across COPs, across CBDs, and even the IPCC. So as much as all of these processes are extremely important in their own right, we must not approach them without taking a step back to see the bigger picture. And that's what I'm going to do with my time here today, is paint a picture of what we're seeing across spaces. And it's kind of complicated, so I'm going to be reading from my notes because it's quite a complicated picture actually. And I'll start with the climate COPs at UNFCCC, where the fossil fuel lobbyists already outnumber our governments, outvoicing our people, and rewriting the rules of global climate response. So at COP27 in Egypt, we saw 636 fossil fuel lobbyists attend, and that was a 25% increase from the year previous in Glasgow. And in Egypt, 90% of the sponsors had fossil fuel ties, and oil and gas reps outnumbered the entire African and indigenous delegations. At COP28 in Dubai, we saw 2,456 fossil fuel lobbyists attend, the highest ever recorded. And it outnumbered delegations from 10 of the most vulnerable, climate vulnerable nations combined. So to compare, 2,456 fossil fuel lobbyists, 1,509 combined delegations from the 10 most climate vulnerable countries. And this is also the COP that we saw France, Italy, and the EU and the UK bring fossil fuel companies within official country delegations, and where the UAE state company ADNOC also pushed for $100 billion in fossil fuel deals during the COP28 presidency. Then we had COP29 in Baku, where we saw 1,773 fossil fuel lobbyists attend, still more than the 10 most climate vulnerable countries combined. And this was also the year that we saw the host, Azerbaijan, also caught on tape using COP to pursue new coal, oil, and gas deals. And that brings us to COP30 in Brazil this year, where we are already seeing the fossil fuel playbook continue. We obviously, don't have the figures yet because obviously it hasn't happened. But what we are seeing already doesn't exactly inspire hope. The COP30 presidency recently announced the engagement of PR firm Edelman to manage its COP30 media strategy. And this is the same firm that simultaneously represents Shell, one of the largest fossil fuel polluters globally. Then we have Petrobras, the issue of Petrobras, Brazil's state-owned oil company, who is projected to increase oil production by 1/3 by 2030, more aggressively than any other major oil producer, with plans to spend $230 billion on new oil and gas by 2050, directly undermining climate targets. So this actually follows a pattern established by COP28 and COP29, where petrostates use their host roles to amplify fossil fuel narratives, broker oil deals, and delay ambition. So COP28 and COP29 represent a clear lineage of petrostate capture, with oil CEOs chairing talks and host countries soliciting fossil investment while claiming climate leadership. Then we have the CBD COP, where at COP16 in Cali, there were 1,261 business or industry delegates who attended. And the DSMOG analysis shows that lobbyists came from sectors that actively depleted biodiversity. So we're talking fossil fuels, we're talking mining, finance, and agrochemicals. And then we look to the science policy space, the IPCC, where we see fossil fuel lobbyists influence IPCC authorship. For example, the Exxon and Aramco reps on the special report on 1.5. And where we've also seen the Australian government previously being outed for lobbying the IPCC to delete references to fossil lobbying, weakening climate policy. So when even the IPCC, the backbone of global climate science, is pressured to delete reference to fossil lobbying, the credibility of our science policy interface is at risk. This directly weakens climate ambition, and policy is no longer grounded in the best available science, but negotiated delusions, actually. And from the analysis elaborated on today by Delphine, the same playbook is very much present and at play here at INC 5.2. The treaty meant to stop plastic pollution is being shaped by those who profit from it. So you might ask yourself, what is the picture I'm painting? It's the widespread fossil capture of multilateralism. These spaces are being increasingly occupied by the very actors causing this crisis, weaponizing participation to water down ambition and delay systemic change. With increasing influence over the last couple of years, the fossil fuel industry has transitioned from obstruction to orchestration, actively shaping agendas, outcomes, and financing narratives. So you cannot solve a crisis by sitting the cause of the crisis at the decision-making table, and you cannot speak of justice while sidelining the very communities fighting for survival. So being from the Pacific, we know what's at stake. We've led calls for a fossil fuel-free Pacific. We've helped deliver the world's first ICJ advisory opinion on climate change and human rights. We're driving efforts like the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty because we refuse to be passive observers while polluters negotiate our future. If it's one thing that really shouldn't need saying, it's that this treaty and all multilateral processes must center people, not polluters. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dylan.